talking to the different groups, whether it was legal, risk management, government relations, PR, about what are we doing from a crisis management situation.
Well, hi, and welcome to another edition of the Ronin Leadership Podcast. This is Mike Howard, and we're here actually on a Thursday afternoon. And I was joking with my guest, David Nicastro, that they've been sending their weather up in the Pacific Northwest down to us because we had a big windstorm last night and got a little bit of rain and snow today, but it's all good. I want to thank all of you for subscribing to the podcast. We've continued to grow our subscribership. It's continuing to grow exponentially, usually week after week. So thank you. Appreciate any comments and or critiques or suggestions that you have for guests. And as always, if you haven't done so already, I've written 2 books on leadership. One, The Art of Ronin Leadership, which is more of a macro view of kind of my leadership journey and a lot of mistakes I've made along the way. And then The Art of Executing Ronin Leadership Strategies, which is more of a how-to book on leadership. You can get any of those at mikehowardauthor.com or on Amazon as well. And again, as always, if you like what you see, press the like button on the screen, subscribe, tell your friends, families, even enemies, because they might need to know something about leadership. And so without further ado, I really am pleased to have someone that I've known, not just as a colleague in the security industry, but as a dear friend, a brother from like way back when. I don't want to tell you, because we're getting older. But anyway, Dave Nicastro, I've known Dave in my formative years as Chief Security Officer. Dave already had quite the background in security, being a CSO, and he'll walk you through that journey. Then building his own successful company, and along the way, really getting involved in the security industry, mentoring people along the way. I consider myself somebody that has benefited from, Dave's mentoring and advice, especially as I was getting my feet wet as a chief security officer. And so I want to welcome Dave Nicastro from up there in the Pacific Northwest. Got a beautiful view, I see, of the evergreens in the background. So thank you for coming on the podcast, brother.
Oh, thank you, Mike. Always a pleasure seeing you, and thank you for having me.
Sure. So I guess, as I do with a lot of the guests here, why don't you tell us something about yourself, your background, and how did you end up in this thing called security?
Well, it was something I hadn't planned on. I joined the Marine Corps, like all of us. I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17 and really just wanted to get away. And at the time, living in Rhode Island, and had never been to Parris Island, South Carolina, but the Marine Corps was happy to send me there, and and just really got lucky and had a mentor in the Marine Corps, a first sergeant who thought he saw something in me, and that rather than being a fire direction controller, which was my military specialty, if you will, said you ought to become a Marine security guard, and that's the best program in the Marine Corps. And I went through the training, and I passed, which was a surprise. And I actually did pretty well, and that was really surprising. And then I remember they said, "Well, you got a choice of places to go," and Reykjavik, Iceland was one of them, and I think Colombo, Sri Lanka, and Beirut, Lebanon. And Sri Lanka didn't sound good, and Iceland sounded so cold. Little did I know it's actually a nice place, but I wasn't the smartest service knife in the drawer, so I didn't really check it out. And I said, okay, Beirut. So I went to Beirut and really cut my teeth on what security is all about.
No
I think
kidding.
the first week we had the embassy was rocket attacked, and went to a bunch of rubble and that was on the ground. The PLO had shot off rockets, and so it was really a dicey situation. And during that time period, we had different embassy leaders who were kidnapped and some killed and attacked, and so we were always on edge. But it was actually a beautiful place to be in Beirut at the time. You could, it's Paris of the Middle East, they called it. But that really gave me grounded me in what real security should be like, and that you have to always be on your toes and proactive about security. It was well before the bombing that took place in '83.
Mm-hmm.
This was 1974, and at the time I was, we also had a civil war. But anyway, like I said, that gave me a real depth into security. And then when I got out of the Marine Corps, I decided I wanted to go into security as a profession. I didn't know if that would take me into the State Department or the Secret Service, where actually as part of the Marine Corps, I was involved in shuttle diplomacy that Henry Kissinger was working on. So I was able to spend some time around some Secret Service guys. But anyway, I went to the University of Maryland, studied criminology, then worked various security jobs going through college. Were interesting, from hotel detective at the Capitol Hilton in Washington to
Really? Wow.
running down bad guys with at People's Drug Store back when you prosecuted people for stealing and that sort of thing. It was a crazy job.
Yeah, the good old days.
the good old days.
Yeah.
And then I got into the Secret Service Uniform Division at the White House. It was the Carter administration, and did pretty well in I was one of the early on training academies at Glencoe, and did well there, and thought this is going to be my career at the Secret Service. And but it was the Carter administration, and God bless the man. He's a wonderful leader, and the things he's done in his life are truly amazing. Now that he's, have to think of him unfortunately in hospice care right now, and what he and his family are going through. But during his administration, Jimmy Carter, as you might remember, Mike, was really cutting back on government, and it didn't look like there were a whole lot of opportunities. A lot of people were leaving the Secret Service, and 3 guys left. I was, I heard early on that, Chuck Vance, Dario Marquez, and Bill Mattman started the company MVM, and they needed employees. So I basically, I was their first employee and took half the White House with me. And and our job that they had was to protect King Hussein's children. Now King Abdullah and his brother Faisal and his sister Zain and Aisha, and we put together quite a detail, and really doing security right. And the company grew pretty quickly. MVM did. We also protected Saudi royalty from Mohammed bin Fahad, whose father was the king, and to actually Prince Salman, who at the time was governor of Riyadh, now king, and others. And then it grew from there. We got involved in lots of training, and in a small company like that, you wore lots of hats. It wasn't like today where everything is a specialty. You do security assessments, and when I got to do a security assessment for Ford Motor Company early on, and there were others on the team, but I learned a lot through that process, and then was around some great people, providing security for leaders like Akayo Morita, who was the CEO of Sony, and Gustavo Cisneros at Venevision, and others, and got quite a wide variety of applications in the security industry that was very beneficial to me later. And then the company split up, and MVM went one way. Chuck Vance started his own company, and Bill Mattman had his own. And at that time, I was providing a security detail for the Koch family. And at that time, they were looking for a security director. So I ended up taking that and moved from Washington, D.C. to Wichita, Kansas. And I was only 31 years old when I was a chief security officer, if you will.
Wow.
Coke. And my boss, who was a great leader, great guy, was the general counsel, a fellow by the name of Don Cordes, who was just a brilliant guy, and got involved in many things with a small security department for a very large privately held company, Koch Industries, if anyone's familiar with them. But, I mean, from investigations to due diligence work to complex investigations, and litigation support, and, ghost payrolls on cargo ships in Greece or wherever, and bombings in Colombia, and all those kinds of things that really expanded my career, if you will, and ideas on what security is all about. Security design engineering. I actually, they put me in charge of after a few years of not only security but what we call corporate services. So I had our facilities and travel. We had a large travel department and administrative services. So I was able to work with an architect on design engineering for security systems, and able to build a travel security program because I was over travel. Although, and of course, I had sharp people around me that were over travel and over facilities and over administrative services, and they really made me look good. So, which is, I think, so important of a leader, that you find good people, let them do their job, and then be honest, and give them credit where it's due. And then, of course, as you said earlier, made lots of mistakes along the way, but somehow survived. And so anyway, I did that for 10 years, and then I decided I really wanted to go out on my own and start my own company. And so started Secure Source International, had several partners at the time, and nobody has an international security company in Wichita, Kansas. So we moved to Dallas and built it up to a point where we sold it to a publicly traded company, Global Options. And I was honored to be around such, really world-class leaders in the company, and be selected as part of that. People who had come from Howard Safer, for instance, was a former commissioner of New York City Police and Fire, and James Lee Witt was a great guy, is a great guy, who's head of FEMA under the Clinton administration. And our company, as well as others, rolled up into one. So worked for them for about 4 years, and I think that's about maybe when we first met. I got them to move me to from Wichita to here in the Pacific Northwest, where, as you know, Marion's family's from.
Right.
And they end up selling the business off in pieces. And at the end of the day, I was really just working heavily in business development for the company, and selling master services agreements with corporate CSOs like yourself and others. And so they offered me to have the company back, and started again in 2010, and haven't looked back since. And having a lot of fun and doing a lot of trying to build value one customer at a time, and trust. So that's the journey. And now is the show over?
Yeah. Okay, we're finished now. So thank you, everybody, for. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's actually, I've learned a lot. I mean, I knew your background, but I didn't know all the nuances, and it's interesting. You go from MSG, right, Marine Security Guard in Beirut, Lebanon, to, owning your own company, and along the way, having those experiences as CSO, but also doing biz dev and being involved in mergers and acquisitions and all these kind of things. So you bring something really different, I think, to the security community. You're exactly what, when I was talking to another person the other day, and the whole thing that you and I know in the industry is, been pushing for decades to become business enablers and get the seat at the table and all this kind of stuff. And you've kind of been able to do that. Not kind of, you've done it along the way. And we'll peel that away later. When you were a young Marine security guard and now here where you are now, are there some lessons you gleaned from those early days in Beirut that there are still nuggets that you may think about every so often that helps you out in your current life?
Yeah, well, of course, as you know, too, and as a Marine security guard, probably the most important thing that happened to me in Beirut was I met my beautiful wife, Marion, there.
Yep.
Her dad was the Army attaché, and I'll never forget that I was affectionately known as the dumb Marine. So that's always in the back of my head, And so
It's because he's
to
Army
be an
and you're a dark
attaché, you're
head.
really a smart guy, and
Right.
and to be on the CIA floor and all that stuff, you're really smart. And I was just a Marine, So it's the first line of defense.
You were post one, you have to pop smoke, so you're pretty important,
That's right.
Yeah.
But we learned a lot of different things. I mean, gosh, there was always the threat of an attack, and what were you going to do, and how would you protect people, and because that's ultimately what the job was protect the interests of the embassy, information, and how you're going to protect people. And so and I remember we had things at that time that I still don't see today. I mean, we had and I don't know if it was made locally by the RSO, Regional Security Officer. For those that don't know, obviously you know the Regional Security Officer at the embassy, but we had liquid banana, what we call liquid banana, Mike. You ever hear of that? It was kind of this oily substance that probably wouldn't environmentally get approved, but we had marble steps, and if we were overrun, you could let this stuff out, these drums, and there was no way you were moving up those steps and getting anywhere, because you'd just be like on a oil slick. And that was fun. So it was like always, well, what are some other ideas you can do to keep people? There's only 13 Marines, and here we got a country full of people that wanted to attack you.
Right.
And so but that gave me a true sense. We had kidnappings, we had a lot of bombings in that time period. You became alert to if somebody got up suddenly in a movie theater and ran out, you'd empty the movie theater. If there was a car backing down the street loud, you run, get out of that area and get whoever's around you out of that area as well, because the next thing that was going to happen was probably a bomb going off.
Right.
So that helped me later, especially becoming a consultant, with challenging yourself and those around you to think outside the box. And that, I remember years later, I kind of applied it for Y2K. At that time, I had my own company, Secure Source, and we were asked to. I was asked to help provide security for their Y2K event on New Year's, and of course, everyone thought it was going to be, we didn't know what to expect.
We didn't know. Yeah.
All computers go down, lights go to electric. At the time, if you recall, I think Washington. I don't know if you were here then.
I was at CIA headquarters. We were pulling watch duty at Counterterrorism Center because, like you said, we didn't know what was going to happen, right?
Right. Yeah. And remember, I think Washington canceled their New Year's event because terrorists came across the border from Canada with explosives, and so I knew why. I was a small company and how I got that project, but I kind of figured it out quick. Again, the dumb Marine, but I eventually kind of got it. They wanted somebody, if something bad happened, that they could blame for what took place. And so they gave me authority to set up security the way we wanted to in 2000. And people thought I was absolutely nuts, but I went back to my Beirut time, and I started thinking, well, first of all, we're going to need generators if power goes out. We're going to, and I said, and it was a lot of firsts with that event. There were about maybe 35,000 people for the lighting of the Pegasus, they called it, in downtown Dallas. And we made it into an event that you needed to have tickets for, although they were free. You just couldn't show up. You had to have a ticket. So people needed to go to 7-Eleven and get their tickets. They could get them for free. I talked them into, we fenced the whole downtown area, Main Street, and for blocks off where we were going to have, there were performances by different people. There were celebrities there. We had, different stands set up to, whether it's to buy, some drinks and beer and sponsors and all that stuff. And general celebrations, entertainers and everything. But it was fenced. You had to have a ticket. I talked them into, and here's where they thought I was really crazy. I said, well, what are we going to do on the streets? Let's say somebody tries to come in with a truck bomb, and they're like, what do you think's going to happen here? And at the time, to the best of my knowledge, I hadn't even heard of truck bomb, but in Beirut, that's something you kind of think about. So They said, well, how are you going to do that? And I said, well, why don't we use buses and just have the bus parked in front of the street, and then, put a banner over it with this Pegasus. It could look kind of cool. And then they said, well, no, we can't do that. If you do that, Dave, if there's a fire, what's going to happen? I said, well, you leave the guy on the bus. We feed him. He has a radio. If he has to move the bus, he moves the bus. But that way we've blocked off these streets from anyone getting in. We had snipers from the Dallas PD. We were allowed to use PD guys. Matter of fact, they really wanted to use just PD guys. And I talked them into not only using Dallas police, but the Dallas school district people, because we wanted to wand and clear people coming through gates, and with backpacks and different things they had. That was an all-time first. I mean, nobody had done this stuff, and they thought it was going to get, it was really going to hurt the event and be something that would, just people would really push back at. We also, a friend of mine who I had running around getting money, and who was really quite a guy himself, a guy named Hans Marrero, who had been the chief hand-to-hand combat instructor for the Marine Corps with the planning and deploying the police and all that stuff. Great guy. And anyway, we did it with our crew, and the school district people did a great job. But what was interesting, Mike, was that after the event, they asked people what they thought, and they said they liked the additional level of security that we had. And we did have generators, we had snipers on the roof, we had a lot of things, and of course, nothing happened. But from a security perspective, that's what it's all about, right? It's and you want nothing to happen. That's the ideal, but you got to be prepared for the worst, and who knows what could have happened.
Exactly.
And so, and then to get out there and say, look, if you're going to put me in charge and want me to run this thing, then, let's do it this way, because these are the possibilities of what kind of things could go wrong. And,
wow.
So anyway, it was so those kind of things over the years. A lot of people thought I, was kind of nutty, but I mean, now look at it. Now that's a standard thing.
Right.
I mentioned to you going to the game a few weeks ago with our friend Dave McGowan to see the San Francisco Dallas game, and poor Dave, they wouldn't even let him in with a little tiny kind of fanny pack, and they made everybody throw away. We had no idea. They won't even let you in unless you got a clear plastic container of what you're carrying.
Yep.
So,
NFL rules. Yep.
Yeah, NFL rules, and now these things are all standardized, right? Or if you ever see the president now moving into an area, I mean, streets are blocked off with either the concrete barriers or dump trucks or whatever. These are standard practices today. But those the kind of thing, and thinking outside the box as security professionals, we got to think about and challenge your viewers and people that see this. While all the technology now and everything going on of, just thinking the possibilities and how you mitigate those kinds of threats. So anyway.
Getting back to the basics now. Well, the other thing is you must have done something right with Marion's dad, given that he's, officer and you were enlisted at the time, and, now you're married. So obviously you did something right,
We did. And we had the wedding at their little house. At the time, he was the base commander at Fort Stewart, and yeah, so it was just her family attending, so there were no other guests. But yeah, thank you. I think I did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I love the colonel. He's a great guy, great
good
man,
guy.
brilliant
Yeah.
man. But
Yeah.
and may he rest in peace.
Oh, yeah. So
Yeah.
you've had several iterations. So you kind of did the government thing, especially the Secret Service. Then you went off, with Vance, and then you took the job with Coke. And when you took the job over with Coke, you already had experience with the government, with private sector. A big question that a lot of young up and coming leaders want to know, whether it's security industry, any industry, is how do you get the buy-in from the C-suite? The proverbial seat at the table, the cliche. So when you approach like the Koch brothers, or if you're advising a young security professional, a new baby CSO, what are some things that you would advise them to do in order that you get that buy-in from the C-suite?
Well, I was really fortunate, Mike, and again lucky, if you will, that I was brought in at a high level. I reported to the general counsel, and he reported to Charles Koch.
Mhm.
And we would attend quarterly meetings with Charles and the president of the company and others, and my boss. You'd lay out a plan, whether it was physical security or what kind of things happen in the business, and key investigations and other things that we're involved in. Charles is an amazing leader, and so my boss Don Cordes was an amazing leader as well, giving credit to where credit was due. And so I did have that invite to the table, and then I also was able to just make good, relationships. And even stepping back from that, one of the first things I did, and I know you did this at Microsoft, is really get to know what the business was like. What was it all about? Ride with people in the field and see what they do on a daily basis. And at that time, we were into buying crude oil out in Oklahoma and all over the U.S. and had trucking. We had a whole trucking division. We had trading, for the traders in New York and all that stuff. I went out and learned those went out to oil rigs and with the exploration, and I started talking to the different groups, whether it was legal, risk management, government relations, PR, about what are we doing from a crisis management situation? How are we programmed for handling those kinds of situations? Are we all communicating with one another? So I think that was so beneficial to me that I was invited to the table, whether it was due diligence on an acquisition and doing, the work you do for backgrounds and before you even got involved in, putting the deal together with those guys who were in special projects, looking at acquisitions, being involved with the lawyers on litigation strategy, and was there something that security and investigations could do to help mitigate risks, travel, what were we doing for picking the right hotels in certain countries that were safe for our travelers, and we had a lot of them traveling all over the world. And again, I was able to do that because I had the travel department, and we put out, at those times everything would be electronic now, but books on, the hotel that was close proximity and good security controls and those kinds of things. And we did that through a network. I'm a strong believer, as you are, we're only as good as our network in this business.
Right.
And you can't be all over the place, but if you've got somebody that's good in Colombia that can help you and help you with selecting hotels or staying safe as you travel through the streets, and educating your employees on best practices and tips on security guidelines and the risks of being in those countries, whether it's from kidnapping or just being accosted on the street or robbed. How do you get that information across? So we put out booklets on travel risks and mitigating those things. But I was given the authority to do that because, my boss, had that level, and I could, walk down the hall and with him and talk to Charles Koch, and decisions were very fast in the company because it was a privately owned company.
Right.
There wasn't a whole lot. It was very lean organization, if you will, what they did. So that to me was so great and gave me really the knowledge and experience to be able to go off into business and try to create the same kind of value for our customers.
Right. I mean, you hit on a great point, which is a big pet peeve of mine. You told me, you went to the oil rigs, you went to the businesses, you found out how they operated, right? And
right,
you find a lot of so-called leaders, they like to, they'll sit in the office, they'll never go visit the troops in the field, they'll never really find out what's going on. I mean, we find that out even in some parts of Microsoft, where you just have people that have global organizations, but they never go out to the field to see the troops, right? And so how do they know? How do they actually know the business? So that to me, that's a great lesson for all leaders, is the things that you did to get out in the field, learn the business, meet the people, find out, and then also you're going to tell them about, your business and what you can do for them and blah, blah, blah. So increase that dialogue. Something you said earlier in the conversation also too, it's all about networking, but it's all about the people that we bring on board, or the specialists that we bring on board to help drive our different, lines of business. So when whether it was Coke or a secure source over the years. So when you're looking to pick talent, top talent, what are some of the characteristics you're looking at?
Well,
besides knowing what the job is.
Sure, obviously that's so critical, and you try to surround yourself with people that are, I've always thought, smarter than me, and also have a different kind of skill set, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's even, how they communicate, how they operationally manage projects, and let them do their job. Don't necessarily be looking over their shoulders, but give them enable them to bring out the best in them to really make you look good, by doing a good job for your customers, and whether they're internal to the business or whether they're external business customers like we have with our clientele. But really, and to give credit where credit's due, and obviously, leaders, have a vision, and you're going to move in a certain direction, and that vision isn't always right and beneficial to the business. Like
right.
Even going back to my Coke days, there were a lot of times I did things that, you go out to the field and you say, hey, would this work? This is applying some security control, if you will. It could be an operational control or measurement or whatever it was. And, and they say, no, that's not going to work. That's the dumbest idea I've ever heard, so don't even waste your time with that. But that's where you've got to understand what drives the business and what builds value to the company. And are you barking up the wrong tree, if you will? But no, I think you want to help groom those people that work around you to become leaders themselves. And it takes humility. It takes kindness. It takes also, you got to be able to measure what they do and give credit where credit's due to those people for the ideas and the innovation that they come up with and what they're able to do to go on to other leadership roles and help mentor them where you can. So
right.
That's just, I think, and it's all about trust and those communicating and relationships with people. And I'm no, I like you said early on, I've made so many mistakes along the way. Luckily, none of them have been totally critical.
I know, right? The little ones, okay, that's okay, you know.
Yeah.
But,
You learn from them, and I better not do that again. It's like touching the stove when you're a little kid.
oh, right.
Not a good idea.
Yeah, someone I got
Yeah.
to do that again. No, that's
Right.
I love that. There's a question that I haven't asked. I don't think anybody in these podcasts, but I'm going to start. And I just, you obviously in your positions, there are a lot of moving plates, right? Moving balls that you're going to have to juggle on a daily basis, right? So you own the business, but as you look at your day, you look at your week, is there a certain way you kind of tackle that week? I mean, knowing you got 10 jillion meetings and phone calls and travel, blah blah blah. How do you structure your week? How do you approach the week mentally, for instance?
Well, I really am not that structured, Mike. I kind of, I don't know what tomorrow or even an hour from now is going to bring. We've had a customer this week that just started with a very serious kind of threat call. I told you last week or a couple of weeks ago, I was at the Threat Assessment Association meeting, and how serious things can get these days with dangerous people that are out there, and whether they're stalking or whether they're going after somebody for some reason, and it becomes the most important thing going on right now. If you can help protect and save a life, or get the information that even gives them peace of mind in what you're doing. So I kind of bounce around, to be honest with you. It's hard to know what's going to come in tomorrow, but everyone feels their problem is the most important one you have.
Right.
And so, we see ourselves as problem solvers. And for me, it's then shifting that off to the right subject matter expert that's going to be able to handle that as quickly as possible, because it's certainly not me. The days of being, when I started out and you did, of being a generalist in this industry is long gone. There's a specialty for everything, and so many key areas. But that's what our whole thing is, to make sure we've got the right expert doing the right thing, whether it's an investigation and we're even involved in some cybersecurity stuff, and there's the ransomware stuff, and it's being able to pick up the phone. I get a lot of people, not a lot, but a number of my customers say, "Dave, you know what I like about you?" And I'll say, "What's that?" And they say, "Well, you answer the phone." Say, well, doesn't everybody? And they say, "No, not necessarily." And then you guys jump on something to help us as quickly as you can. To me, that's the key thing. And if I have a driving idea for my week, it's be kind to people, listen to because to them, their problem is the most important thing you have. And to us, it's then let us help you figure this out and give you the peace of mind you need. And the only way we can do that, scalable wise, is for me not to be doing the work, if you will. I've got to direct it off to the right people, and then we get back to them, and we try to do that very quickly. And I'll shift over now, Mike, I think I might have told you this when we were in Atlanta, but the neatest thing I was able to do, probably in my career, of different things we've done over the years, was when we were asked to help get some people that were really persecuted and being in some serious danger, getting them out of Afghanistan. People I've never met, but I was on, calls with, WhatsApp calls with, and other things, and using our network to get, a little daughter and her mother out who were had run a girls' school with a family, and again, it was through this network, because I was only the connect the dots guy, but we got them out free at no cost because of NGOs that are really super people, and others that they also focus on getting refugees placed in the United States or Canada or Germany, and they do all the heavy lifting, but I was able to help connect dots and the pictures I got of the little girl and her mom on a commercial flight leaving and wearing a mask because of COVID, but just giving you this look of hope for being able to live a life that, you know, might not have been lived if they had stayed in Afghanistan. And we've done the same thing in Ukraine, by the way. With now we've gotten over 60 people out. I think we've gotten through the network over 100 and some people out of Afghanistan.
Wow.
And the ones in Ukraine are mainly women and children and elderly and sick, and help get some medicine in. Those kinds of things today really drive me the most. But you know, it's to me, I love the diversity of the stuff that we do, and it could be. And we got threat case on line one. We got you know, we got an investigation into theft out of a warehouse in Chicago on line two. We got
evacuation line
in
3
Bolivia or something. You know, who knows what it's going to be. But to me, if you can utilize the knowledge and experience that we all have, and help people, you live a better life somehow. If you're given that opportunity, and you can do it with a network and just quickly, gosh, that there's nothing more important or self-fulfilling to me than that.
Yeah, I mean, that's outstanding. A lot of people don't realize the work that's being done, like folks like you in Afghan, Ukraine, you know, and like you said, it's got to give you a really great sense of satisfaction knowing that you actually, you know, of course you saved lives before, but this is kind of special. These are special circumstances, right? That you'll always remember.
Absolutely, it really is, and you know, and as you know, this industry is really quite amazing. There's so many talented people out there that have come from, whether it's the FBI or the CIA, like yourself, or you know, even, you know, whether they started as a security officer, like a Dave McGowan, guys we know and respect so much, who are brilliant thought leaders. And it doesn't matter where Dave Commandant, doesn't matter where you started, but or Cynthia Hetherington, you know, who you've had on your show. She's a librarian, but brilliant, and what she's done with her business is amazing. But so it's not me. I mean, our whole industry is just packed with all these people, and I'm only, you know, one you know, minuscule part of that. But when called upon, I mean, we try to just leverage all those kind of contacts and people we know, and you know, really help our clients and others, you know, get out of a problem and fix it as fast as we can. And that's, I think, the true value of what we can bring as an industry. And I'd say to you know, people who are starting out, you know, just build that network and you know, and keep humble and you know, and value those relationships, because we're only as good as those people in our network, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. Amen to that. I guess one final question. Again, you know, I've known you for a long time. You know, they talk this thing about work-life balance. In my opinion, there's not really such a thing when you're really working in your own business or in an enterprise. But like, what are the things that you do to try to decompress or make sure that you're not going to burn yourself out? And I know it's different, you know, because you are the business, you own the business, right? So, but you know, how do you cope with stress?
Well, I love to get out, whether it's hiking or skiing, or for me, golfing. You know, I look at that as a hike with a stick, but it keeps me. And I'll get out there and I'll say to myself, one reason I don't want to retire is because right now I've got a pretty good excuse why I'm such a crappy golfer.
Right.
You know, at least in my mind, I know I'll never be good. I could play every day, 24/7. I'd still not get any better. But it does help me decompress to be out there and say,
that would be stressful.
I got to go back to work. And so I try to do that, and you know, and our, you know, you get your family and kids and grandkids, and you know, just some reading, or you know, watch a show,
Yeah.
decompress that way. But for me, it's getting outdoors. And even though it's kind of chilly today, you know, try to, as Marion says, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothes. So
That's
uh,
that's a very, very wise woman. Very wise woman.
see, because her dad was very smart and he recognized the dumb ring. So I hang with her too. So
Yeah,
that
that's
it keeps
true.
me honest.
It does keep you honest. So I guess I thought that was the last question. There's one final question. When you look at the future of our industry, and there's obviously cyber seems to be taking precedence over just general physical security. It's happened in the last few years. And it's understandable, right? But do you
Mhm.
have hope? Do you have hope for the people coming up, and especially the physical security side, that there's a path for them to grow, that they'll be able to fulfill whatever their dreams are?
Absolutely. I think there's so many opportunities in this business, and especially in understanding this threat environment we're in, and you know, all the craziness going on in these cities, and the innovation, bringing new ideas and ways of handling security, whether it's physical security or the cyber security. There, you know, it seems to me it's growing exponentially, and we need more and more of those experts coming out of, whether they're coming out of federal agencies or schools or wherever, to be involved in this business to mitigate these threats, cyber threats, as well as physical threats that are just taking place. I think it's so sad, across the country in our cities, and you know, places like Seattle, or even Las Vegas. I mean, right now
Sure.
we're doing some security in Las Vegas and what's going on the Strip, and it's a harsh environment, and it's a very challenging environment for any security practitioner, whether they're a security officer or standing post um, at a pharmacy on the Strip in Las Vegas, or whether they're, you know, working at a Starbucks, or whether they're, you know, working at Microsoft in cybersecurity. That it's just unbelievable where this business has gone, and I think the future is just, you know, unfortunately, probably for society,
Yeah.
it's one of the most highest growth areas, I think, that's going to be here for years and years to come. I also hope that, you know, we were able to, I mean, look at what's needed from a law enforcement perspective too, and what
Hmm.
those heroes are out there doing on a daily basis, and the military experts and all these things. You know, right now, believe it or not, they're talking to us about, you know, the next thing is going to be explosive ordnance disposal in Ukraine, and the rebuilding of Ukraine, and the due diligence you're going to have to do on who you're associated with for contractors, and the security there. And then, you know, of course, the geopolitical risks right now going on, and whether it's the Horn of Africa, or in Latin America and these different countries. I think there's, you know, we see all these people getting out of government, but there's certainly a job, I think, for every one of them. And the opportunities are just amazing. And the things you're doing, Mike, are just incredible, to mentor people and to get the word out, with what you've done with leadership and everything else. Is just, you're my hero. So
No, I appreciate that. Thank
yeah.
you. And you're spot on. I agree with you 100%. It's been really cool to hang out with you and just unravel your journey, which is continuing, right? I mean, there's still things for Dave Nicastro and his team to do, right?
Absolutely, yeah. You know, we were really scratching our heads when COVID hit, what we were going to do, and we ended up bringing doctors, nurses, and EMTs to Maldives. I really wanted to go there myself, and I had a place for you too, Mike. We'd be out fishing on that little pier, but they actually wanted real doctors, nurses, and EMT. I said I could drive the truck.
Yeah, and I could ride shotgun. I could ride shotgun for you. You know?
See, that would have been great. Well, I look forward to the next time we do get together, and best to Janice, and really appreciate you having me on today, and hopefully there's something there for people that might help them in some small way. But
I guarantee that you threw out a lot of nuggets out there, so I appreciate it, Dave. And yeah, of course, best to Marion, and hopefully we'll see each other soon. So that's it for this edition of the Ronin Leadership Podcast. This podcast will be out very soon, and please listen to it, learn from it, share it, so they can share the wealth of knowledge that someone like Dave has been able to give us this last hour. Again, like I said at the beginning of the episode, if you like this channel, please hit the like button and subscribe. Tell your friends and other folks about it, and we'll come out with another edition of the Ronin Leadership Podcast very soon. All right, we'll talk to you.